Okay. Today, we'll be talking about the quality management and Six Sigma. Okay, please, during the break, ask this question to your teammate who were there in the class, and I've already spent half an hour explaining it. And I'm sure one of your teammates is there. I'm not gonna go and explain this another half an hour for because somebody is late. And you have a teams, you have a group, and you can talk to your group and find out what's the subject all about. And you already selected the subject in the beginning of the week, or the beginning of the semester. So you're not telling me what's the subject because you have selected it. And if you don't not willing to look at your old emails, I'm not willing to look at your old emails.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
So next week we have to only submit the assignment and
no presentation.
Test.
Yes. Yeah.
Test and submission.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody has a question regard of before we move on, because the question saying what's the subject? It's the subject was you set it up 10 weeks ago that about your assignment. It's not me to select, it's you selected it. And some of you selected I think Coca-Cola or Pepsi. Some of you selected.
We have to choose any company or any product which shows
exactly.
the management.
Exactly. And you already done it. So that's and if you have a problem, there's two options. You can do is one, you communicate with your teammates who's been in a class in the first half an hour, or you go back to your old emails where you sent me an email saying, this is my group and this is the subject I'm going to talk about, we're going to present. So in this learning, what we will learn today is the fact we're going to talk about explaining the scope of total quality management in the firm.
Excuse me, Professor?
Yes.
We just tell the in the assignment, we just tell the like regarding strategies, objectives, something like that of the company.
No, you look at the supply side of them. So you have two supply side. One supply side, when say I'm a company who produce a book, okay? Now I'm supplying this book to somebody, to other companies. So you go there and you check their site, how they are supplying to these people, to the customers. The other option, when I'm producing this book, I need for the supply, somebody's supposed to supply me with the papers, ink, I don't know. Somebody should write these books. You might go and analyze that part of it. You know, when you're a company, you have a suppliers and you are a suppliers for somebody. When you have a restaurant, there is a suppliers for you who brings you the buns, brings you the burgers, bring you the onions, everything. So there is an operation of supplying to you as a restaurant. But in the same time, you are, as a restaurant, a supplier for a customer. Okay? So you might be you have a choice whether you are analyzing yourself, this restaurant, as a supplier to the customer, how's this operation is happening, any company you pick. Or
yeah, suppose like I pick the Husky Husky Energy, right? I
Yeah.
just put the what are the operation and supply chain management of the Husky
Yeah,
strategy and sustainability of the like Husky, something like that.
exactly.
And what are the
And
management?
management and how they get their supply on time, what's the
Yeah, yeah.
operation, are they doing just in time, what's their what's their quality, how they do that. If you're looking at their supplier side, but if you're looking at Husky as a supplier for the customer, so
Okay. Fine.
then you're looking at where they're putting their gas station, for example, how they're providing the services, all this operation that they are doing it. So you have an option of one of these two. Because when you
Okay.
said, when in the early stage, in the first class, you said, and I didn't want to ask you about on the detail, you said, I'm going to write about um, iPhone, for example. I didn't tell you which part of iPhone you want to write. You want to write this side or that side of iPhone. iPhone as a supplier to customers, or iPhone as a buyers to Chinese products to produce the iPhone. So it's up to you. You have that option also. Now
Okay.
it could be a product, or it could be a service, or it could be a combination of both. That's
Okay. Thank you,
fair.
Professor.
No problem. Now, back to this. So today, as we said, we're going to explain the scope of total quality management, global recognizer of quality benchmarking. What's a benchmarking and how it's done? Understand the Six Sigmas, and illustrate the process of variation and explain how we can measure our business to the rest of the business in the certain functionalities, and analyze the process, the quality, well, using the statistics. Once again, these statistics is something that can be done, through softwares. And benchmarking is the most important part of this when you do a business. So the total quality management is managing basically the entire organization so that it excel on all dimension, product, and services that are important to them. Remember when I showed you how the CRM connected to the ERP, and how is MRP connected to ERP, and how all these part works according to perfection, or they're trying to seek the perfection. And this is what you call a total quality of management. And the whole reason is a company wants to reach to this quality for two things. One thing is to get more customer satisfaction, and the second to minimize the waste. And the two fundamental of the operation is a careful design of a product or a service. So you need to really carefully design it and ensure that the organization system can consistently produce that. So there is two part of it, is you need to produce a perfection, but to produce perfection, there is a process and procedures that you need to perfect it also. And the reason of that, if you're not perfecting the process and procedures, you're going to produce a perfect product at a very high cost. And sometimes, if you're not perfecting a process and the procedures, you will end up producing 1,000 units, which is part of percentage of it is very defective. So there is two things that you need to do, is carefully design of the product and the services. And you saw from lots of videos that I show you how they carefully design the product and services and how things is moving around. And also they look at the consistency of the design itself. I'm not going to go this. You can check that, the total quality management, and is zero defect, responsibility of qualities, all these things is a list of, it's like the Bible of total quality management. So in the quality operation, the design quality inherit the value of product in the marketplace. So the value of the product, when you want to design something, you're not going to design something less than what's in the market. You need to first inherit what's the qualities in the market and make it better in order for you to be competitive in the market. Most of the people think, for example, I brought this example, think that the Japanese are very advanced in producing. Now, that's true, but the Japanese are not very advanced in inventing. Most of the invention happens in USA, and most of the perfections happening in Japan. So the Japanese take the car of that American cars that they came up with the new stuff in it, like a ABC, ABS, or you know, uh, central lock and all these, and they perfect it because they make it better. So this is where they became more competitive in the market. The Koreans are doing the same thing, but the most of the inventions happening in the other places. For example, I brought this example of the first color TV was done in Philips in Holland, Netherlands. But if you tell anybody that I'm going to buy at Philips, he must be crazy, because you're looking at other Japanese product who have a better color TV. And the reason, they took the invention of Philips, which is in Netherlands, and made it better. And that's what they did, the perfection in it. So the design quality, you inherit the value of the product in a marketplace, and then the degree to which the product or services design are met. The quality at the source. This is another thing that when you're doing operation, you have a tendency that you give the responsibility to the who does the work, the worker there. He is the one supposed to be in charge of the quality, because when he's doing this work, he is the SME, he's the subject matter expert in doing that part. So he's supposed to do the quality of the work there. Now, basically the quality specification, and when you look at the quality specification, the performance is the primary product or the service characteristics. The feature is added touches, on it. The reliability, durability, how reliable is the product, how durable, how strong has to be always consistent. The serviceability, when you're selling something, that you have to be able to be easy to be repaired or service provided. And the perceived quality, the customer has to see that your product is qualified for for him to pay the price for it. So we pay for the value, we don't pay for the cost. In other words, if somebody bringing me a car and try to sell it to me at $10,000 and supposed to be a Mercedes 2020, that's a very cheap price for $10,000 brand new. But the question is here, do I value that Mercedes at $20,000 in order for me to pay that $20,000? So in a word, you want to make sure your customer is, when he's paying, he's getting the value return of the money he's putting or the resource he's putting there. So that's what you call a perceived equality, because he's getting something, a value for the money he's putting in. Now, the cost of quality. everything has cost, and the quality also got the cost. So when you're seeking a quality for a product, you also, first of all, if you're not seeking equality, you're going to be less competitive, and you have two options. One, you're out of the market, and the second is that you have to have a very low price. And in the case of very low price, sometimes you cannot even survive in the matter. So there is a cost on equality, and these days, for example, when you're looking at cars, in the old days, we know that Mercedes had better products. In today, is also Mercedes has a better product, but it's not much better than others. So everybody is trying to meet this quality that they are producing, such as safety, central lock, air conditioning, cold one, and all these things. So the gap is getting really smaller in it. So but there is always cost associated to have a better quality, and the cost of, and one of the costs is the appraisal cost, which is the cost of inspection and testing to make sure that the product is processed in an acceptable way. And everybody saw this, some commercials of dummies in a car, and they hit something and just they want to test. So when they're testing the car, that's cost of the totally destroying the car, and they just want to inspect and make sure that the product is there. Now, there is another cost in the quality is called a prevention cost. Some of all costs is to prevent defect. So you try to put it under the heat, under the cold weather, to make sure that things doesn't get defected. On the other hand, there is something called internal failure cost. So while you're producing the product, you might have two type of failing on producing the product itself, or failing in the machine that's producing that product. So this is also an internal cost. The external failure cost is the cost of defect that pass through the system. So the product, once it's produced, and when it comes to the in the end of production, you see, oops, the car, we forgot to put the brakes in it. So that's the external, when the product's already produced. So that's the external failure cost. Now, I will keep looking at your comments. So if there is a question, I would love to answer it. But you want to make sure you communicate perfectly with your team, because this is the way it's supposed to be done. Now, let me confess one thing. There was a small mistake that I've done in this semester. I usually, for example, in the other colleges, in Centennial College, I give two group assignment, one in the beginning of the semester and one in the end. And the reason is because I want them to connect. The team connects to each other in the beginning of the semester very well. And trust me, by end of the semester, they becomes very good friend, and they understand each other, and the wonderful team works together. This is what I will do probably in the next semester, that I will give two group assignment, one in the beginning, one in the end. So the team will be collaborating and working and becomes one person. And this is the fun part of it, is when you feel that 1 + 1 equal with 3 and not equal with 2. And then when you go in the market, you will be you're loving that you work with others and share your knowledge, and they share the knowledge with you. And because this is how word progress. Now, There is something called ISO or standardization ISOs, and I'm not going to talk that much about the history of ISOs, but it's a series of standard agreed open the international organization for standardization. There's work of a standardization. And there is different type of standardization, but standardization is they have two reasons. One reason is when I'm having a company or a service, I want to make sure am I working up to the standard? What's the market standards? The second thing I want to do is by having standardization, that will help to give more secure feeling, more trusted feeling to other party to partner with you. And this ISO was all built around these two issues. And there is an ISO 900, there is an ISO 1400 and 2600, and all is different reason it's done with it. The first part, but it's done by this certification called ISO is done by first party, a firm audit itself against ISO standard. The second type is the customer audit suppliers. And the third type is some you ask for an agencies who their job comes in and audit you and give you a license or a certification that you are ISO 9000 or ISO 1400 or whatever. And each one of them is specialized in certain field. Now, so we come to the benchmarking. And the benchmarking is basically, let's say you have say software. Okay, your software has been working in 5,000 employees. The biggest customers that you have is a 5,000 employees. But you have other people who is interested in your application, but they are having 10,000 employees. One of the things they will ask you, do you have a similar company? You say, yes, I do, it's functional. I said, no, well, functionality is fine. I want to see, does your software works with the 10,000 employees? So in order for you to do that, there is companies, their job is to do a benchmarking. They will assimilate a software where they will be assimilating some kind of 10,000 employees or 100,000 employees, and they are utilizing this application. So you want to see, you put a bench for it. And they will issue a certification for you saying, this application can manage 10,000 employees, 100,000. And you notice that when you use Zoom, few times they fail because the problem is the benchmarking that their application was set up for a certain level. And when everybody went on COVID-19, everybody started using Zoom, suddenly this application had difficulties to manage all these people. And they failed a few times and they had to upgrade it. And that's what that's where you say the benchmarking. Now, for example, if you talk about, once again, the international ERP solution, there is a benchmarking of 100 subscriber, 200 subscriber. As an example, Bell or Rogers, they have millions of subscribers. So their billing system, before they purchase it and implement it, they have to see what's the benchmark for it and how many customers being tested. I'm sorry. So the benchmarking steps is identifying the process that it need improvement and analyze the data. Are there performance gap between them? So we talked about softwares. Now we talk about product, and your product is probably you're making a hamburger, but it's a little bit little bit spicy. And then you analyze it and you see, oh, this is a little bit spicy, and people like burger in North America less spicy. There is where you identify the improvement of doing it, and it's accordingly you do the process of being spicy or less spicy. Um, this is what we call about being spicy, benchmarking. Now, the Six Sigma is the philosophy and a set of methods companies, it's just like an ISO style. It's a philosophy and a method that companies use to eliminate the defect in their product and processes. Now, you remember in the beginning of the class, I said, the reason I implement a software for my company is I want to perfect the processes that I'm gonna produce for the product. So I'm not putting this software only to help me to, once I'm proving something goes to my HR, once I'm doing it. No, I'm also improving the processes of doing it. And to make it very easy, processes is just like you wake up in the morning and you take a shower, you eat your breakfast, you get on the bus, you come to school, you take the courses, you write notes, and you go back to. These are the processes. Now, somebody can look at your processes and says, well, first of all, you're carrying too many books. Let's carry less books that you really need. That's improving your processes happening. You come way early for the bus, and it's too cold, and you can have some time there at home doing. That's the process. Is the routines that they want to improve it when they look at it, and they seek to reduce the variation in the processes that lead to the product defection. So the variation also, now you need to improve the processes, and you need to make sure this variation of processes, it doesn't go up and down. To want to make sure when you do your work, the electricity there, the office temperature is fine. All other things that if they go wrong, they might produce a defective product. So the name Six Sigma refers to the goal of no more than they're targeting 4 defects per 1 million units. So they were making 1 million, they're looking at only 4 defects in it. Now, probably after this slide, we will take a short break, and then you probably give you five more minutes for the short break to just meet with your group and start, communicating and exchange that. So the methodology is define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Define where is the problem, or define the play. Then you measure it, whether it's a problem or not. Then you start analyzing it, and you try to improve it. And it's developed usually by GE, General Electric company. The overall focus of the methodology is to understand and achieve what a customer wants. Okay, so whatever the customer wants is you try to achieve that through the Six Sigma. That's the ultimate goal. And the Six Sigma program is really, as we said, seek to reduce the variation of the processes that led to these defects. Now, most of companies, most of the people don't understand how things is done. They know for example, you don't know how to make this bread. You eat that bread. But if you look behind, there is a process of how to make this bread, where they get the supply from, where they get the water from, how much salt they put, when they're supposed to do it, who's supposed to do it. These are all processes has to be done. So these are the things that in the Six Sigma, you analyze them to make sure that you're producing a right bread and less defective numbers of it. This is only a right way of definition, how the process is happening. And we will probably look at the flow chart of it. Suppliers input, see, suppliers input, processes, output, customers. Here's where's your assignment, is the fact you are owner of this processes. Now you have a suppliers and inputs, and you might be analyzing these, or you have an output and customers, and you might be analyzing these. And you're talking about the supplying processes of it. And the process steps is put the original on the glass, close the lid, for example, adjusting, press start, and it is a process that is, this is a sample of how the flow chart, they break down the flow chart of a product. So you need to look at it. And here, they bring in an example of photocopy machine. And in the photocopy machine, you need an office supply company, you need yourself, you need a power company, and then the inputs for the photocopy machine is the copier, the paper, the toner, the energy, original, and the electricity. And the output is a copy, and could be done for a customer, for you, or to put it in a file. So with a photocopy machine, these are probably the processes that the flow chart, you look at it and then you start looking at the improvement. And probably when you're doing a copy, you notice sometimes the machine stops for one of the major reasons, out of ink or breaks down. To fix that, you might plan that to change the ink every week, or at a certain level of ink, you need to change it, or you plan that somebody can do a maintenance every week, comes in on weekend and do the maintenance, whether it's broken or not, they do the maintenance. So these are two things that you can improve the processes of how this work is done. So you go there and you say, okay, you, Mr. X, you come every day morning, you check the ink, although your job is something else, but you check the ink. If there is a less ink in the copy machine, then you need to, or toner, you need to replace it. You learn how to do the maintenance of it, and every week your job is to do the maintenance. This is the process, is how it's done in order to have the things is done accordingly. So this is the last part. The failure mode and the effect analysis, which is FMEA, is a structured approach to identify, estimate, prioritize, and evaluate the risk of possible failure at each stage. And once you do that, you try to see where is they might fail, because when it fails someplace, all the process behind after you, and they will stop. And then you will have processes that is done before you, they will be accumulating so many because they keep coming and stops here, and this is a broken, and there they need their supply, and the supplier is sending you, and suddenly your prices of inventory also goes up. So this is where you need to want to make sure that you are identify, estimate, and prioritize and evaluate the risk of possible failure. Then you design of experiment, a statistical methodology that you use a cause and effect relationship between the variety of output. And this is the last thing before we take the break. See, there is two type of risk taking failing. One type, when you do say it's say it's 50%, this machine will break. So there is only a chance of 50% this machine is break. But the machine, that's machine X. Machine Y, they have 2% chance of failing. So machine X, 50%, machine Y, 2%. And you say, okay, so I'm gonna pay attention to machine X, which is 50% chance of failing, and I will ignore machine Y, which is 2% chance of failing. And that's a wrong approach, because you need also to evaluate with it, if that 2% chance of failing happens, how much cost associated with it? How much damage associated with it? You might have 50% chance of that machine X failing, but there is not much cost or risk associated with it. So you need to look at the chance of failing or defection and the risk associated, what if this risk happening. Okay, so we will take a break here. We will be back at, I'll give you probably 15 minutes. We will be back at 2:20. So 2:20. But you want to make sure during this 20 minutes, 10, 15 minutes of break that I'm giving you extra, you need to communicate with your team, at least exchange some contact between all of you, find out the subject that you, in the early classes, you decided to work on it, and take it from there. And whomever doesn't have a group, he can make an announcement here and says, I don't have a group. Because when I'm correcting the assignment, I'm correcting according to F5, 4 to 6 people doing that. So you guys take a break and just have a discussion on this chat with each other. Okay, we're back. Here is one more thing forgot to let you know. When you're sending me your assignment, or even your test, but assignment most important, you want to do it in a very professional way, in a sense that, first of all, when you send an email, you're gonna put the right title in the subject. So once I look at the subject, I understand what you're writing about. And then you write your email. And because you have a group in your team, you need to write their names, their ID number, and you need to CC them. Please, you want to make sure that you are CCing the team. If you're not CCing the team, I don't know whether that person is in your team or not. Then you want to make sure you don't put your nickname, you put your full name as indicated in your college and your ID number in the email or in the project, so I can know who is this person. So when I put the mark, I know who I'm supposed to do. Now keep in mind, beside you, I have another 90 students. So it's very difficult for me to memorize your nickname or your email address. and what's the subject you're going to write about, because so many people are writing to me and I have to answer them. So my job is to look at their subject and then answer it according to that subject. Be very precise, very clear, very professional. It's going to be a written for you. If you're not doing the clear, precise, professional, then you're not expecting me to answer, to know who's the person is sending to me. And if he doesn't see his marks is showing up, is because I cannot allocate this person in this subject matter. So please, once again, I will reject any assignment that is not being CC'd by the teammate. And I will put marks for the people who have their name written there in the assignment or in the email and their ID number. Because I'm not gonna know your nickname, your abbreviation name, or your non-professional name. So please do that when you do your assignment. Now, let's continue with the subject. That's where we stopped. So basically, statistical quality control is the quantity aspect of quality management versus the process usually exhibits some variation in their input. Another word is the higher is the variation that is caused by factors that can be identified and managed, the variation that is inherited itself. It's explained itself better here. The ability to process to consistently produce a good or delivery a service with a low probability of generating defect there. So if you're producing products with a less defect, means your variabilities is not much, doesn't go up or down. It's a standard, and the products would be very limited range there. So the specification limits the range of variation that considered acceptable by the designer or the customer. You cannot make one, your bread is burned and once is crusty and once is mushy, and it's a standard that you have to produce when you make a bread. Now, when you are taking the first material, there is certain amount that you need to mix in order to produce that bread. The process limits range the variation. So there is a variation where you accept the supply. Now, if it goes higher, then you probably start complaining about the way they're supplying, whether in the timing wise or the quantity wise or the quality wise, and you try to replace that supplier for you. Now put yourself in that supplier. You could be that supplier, which is you have a variation of defective products or a high variation. The buyer, the customer, would not accept that and try to replace you. So it's very important that you set up a limit on your accepting the products. Now, accepting the samples, you always have a samples, perform on a good that already exists to determine what percentage of product confirmed to specification. So the customer, which could be another supplier, or could be a factory, or could be a real customer, one customer who buys for his end use, will put some standard, some specification, some requirement, which is you need to meet them. And that could be one customer or all the customers want to. And you need to execute them according to this requirement. And how you execute them, first you do a sample plan and you test it and see if it's produced according to the standard. Then the result you accept, reject, or retest again. Now determine the quality level. In quality, ensure the quality is within the predetermined level. So the acceptance of sample, why you do the sample, is that you need to see, are you meeting the customer production before you produce it? And this is, if you talk about technology, this is done on an early level. When you are implementing a software, you will do first testing, and the testing, then you get the approval from the customer, and then you populate it and make it available for everybody. And this is what you call you have to determine the quality level, ensure the quality within the predetermined level. And most of this time, this is driven by the customers or best practice behavior. So accepting the sampling, there is advantage and disadvantage in it. The disadvantage is a risk of accepting bad lots and rejecting good a lot. Adding planning and documentation. Sample provide less information than 100%. Let's assume you do a sample and by luck you became successful in that sample. That doesn't mean your production is going to be successful, but you minimize the risk of getting rejected, and you mitigate that regard of the rejection. So you do a sample, for example, you say, okay, I'll make you one piece of salad, small, but if you like it, I will make you a bigger piece of pot of salad, or I'll make a small hamburger. If you like it, then I will make 100 of them for you. The advantage of it is the economy, because you're not going to make something and after you get committed, it's going to say, no, that's not meeting the standard, and you have to take it back. So you will have a less handling damages. You do less, fewer inspectors because you did already on the sample. Upgrading of this inspection job, applicability to this destructive testing and entire lot rejection motivation improvement. So the whole thing is you need to want to make sure that you're producing something according to the requirements. And this is why you take the sampling into consideration. Now, in the inventory management, we will talk about explaining how the inventory is used and why we need inventories, and why inventories is such an important issue for today, for the market, for people who wants to really do business. In general, inventories cost any production, any company, at least 30% of their whole operation, which is quite high. So if you can minimize the inventory, then you are saving that 30% of cost, lowering it. But in the same time, if you have a very low inventory, the customers might come in and find out that you don't have the supply enough, and he walks away, and that's a lost opportunity. So you want to balance between number of the customers that they come in and require your product, and the level of inventories that you have to process your product. And that's where it comes according to your experience, plus to your knowledge of how you manage that product or that service in the inventory. So it's an important subject. And to look at the definition, inventory can be visualized as a stock of money sitting on the forklift shelves and in the truck and the planes while they transit. So all these things before reach to the hand of the customer becomes considered to be inventory. So even the products in the process, they are inventory for the next stage, and they are considered to part of the inventory cost. For many business, as we said, inventory is the largest assets on the balance sheet and is usually between 30 to 35% the cost. That's in USA. They can be very difficult to convert to the cash because they could be products that is semi-finished or product that non-finished, so it cannot to and even if you could convert it to cash, there would be, you have to take some pay cut in it in order to go for it. So it is a good idea to try to get your inventory down as far as possible, as I said, but not where you can hurt your business. The type of inventories models, you have a single period models when you are making one-time purchase for an item. So you do one-time purchase, so that's called a single model. Then you have the fixed order quantity, and it goes like, I'm gonna buy 30 units every time I'm running out of the stock, or my stock goes down, I'm buying 30. So if my stock goes down lower than 90, I'm buying 30. At 89, I'm buying 30. So this is what you call a trigger for the inventory levels, which is a fixed order quantity focus. And there is the time, fixed time period. So you say every 3 months or 4 months, I'm buying these type of quantity because is every 4 months I'm buying in that time. And for many reasons, could be in that time could be cheaper, or in that time you're running out, or in that time there is a higher demand for your end product. Now, the definition, inventory, the stock of any item or resource used in an organization. That includes the raw material, finished products, work in the process, component, that's all considered to be inventory. Manufacturing inventory is referred to items that contribute to the become a part of the firm's product. And in a few weeks ago, we spoke about how to do the chart, the flow chart of producing one product, and what kind of items involved in it, and number of the items and required to produce that product. Inventory system is set up policies and control that monitor level. These days, one of the most known inventory interference with the application is RFID. And RFID is a system that, count inventory items once moved from the warehouse to certain places, so you can allocate the process of it. And with the RFID, you can really control numbers, unit coming in and unit coming out. So the purpose of inventory is, one is to maintain the independence of operation. Once again, once you don't have inventories, you cannot produce. And once you not produce, you become dependent to the supplier, and you might have a different suppliers, which is, we spoke about it, to mitigate the risk of, supplying. You can have few suppliers. So you want to stay independent. And to stay independent, you want to make sure that you have enough supply in your warehouse. And other reason is to meet the variation in the demand product. And we said that sometimes the demand for the customer, they want to consume at a certain time, certain level of a product, and a certain time, lower level. To allow the flexibility in the production scheduling, to provide a safeguard for a variation in a raw material delivery time, to take advantage of the economic purchase. So sometimes things is the bigger bulk you buy, the cheaper, or in certain days of time is cheaper. So you take advantage of that. And the main, and we did the calculations, you know, when you're supposed to buy, specific reason, other thing. There is some supermarkets that you walk in and basically you find out that they do have same product, yet it's cheaper. And the reason for that, because they have two issues. One issue might be overstock on this product, and it's about to get expired, or they want to, get cash to buy different kind of product. So they're lowering the price and making sure people buys it. The second thing, and that's probably you go every market and you find some stuff on sales. Maybe this is one of the reasons. But there are markets who specialize in offering you a cheap product. And the reason, I've done some studies regarding that. These people are, how they do that, they already know the demand of the customers, the numbers required during that time, or all the year. So they buy products almost few days or few weeks to be expired, and they put it on shelf, and they know somebody will pick it up at the same time or in 24 hours. And this way, they buy things as cheaper, and they bring it cheaper there, and then they can have the products move very quickly. Now, if you don't do this calculation, and if you don't have this product, imagine there is two risks of taking it. One risk is you might have some kind of food get expired, and when you get expired, that heavy cost, especially in fast-moving goods like supermarkets and all these things, hypermarket, because when things is expired, you lose all things about it. Is the cost, your profit, and you need to replace it with a 4 or 5 units similar to that. And the second thing, you want to make sure that your price is very competitive to the market. Now, there is a holding cost, as we said, in inventory. There is a holding or carrying cost, cost of storage, handling, insurance, and so on. There is setup or production change cost, which is cost of arranging specific equipment setup, or so on. And there is an ordering cost, and we did go through this in details in the early subject, and how much cost for setting up order. Sometimes you order, we talked about buying things from Amazon, and it's a $14, but you end up paying $100 shipping and handling, which is an ordering cost. And it tells you buy two things. For example, we brought an example saying buying 2 t-shirts for $50 on Amazon, and then you go to the market and you find each shirt $30. So you say, okay, I'm not buying 2 t-shirts from the store on the corner because it's going to cost me $60. I'm going to order from Amazon. And you order from Amazon, and then they say, okay, it's $50 plus $100 handling and shipping. So that's where it makes the difference. And I brought you some video where is you're buying some units, how many units is there, like we were talking about The example was about the watches, number of watches that you need to order. You cannot order them in the first year because whole in one time, because you're selling few of them every month, and you have to order in the right time. And the cost of shortage in inventory. So if you have a shortage in inventory and people comes in and try to buy certain thing and they don't find it, they would take their business and buy from another store, and maybe they will be buying some other stuff from the another store, which is just because they couldn't find certain flours or certain bread in your store, so they end up going to another store buying the flour they need, or and then same time they're buying the ketchup, they're buying the milk, everything from there. So there is a cost hidden in the shortage. So that's cost that you look at it when you're talking about inventories. And there is a single, as we say, single period inventory model, one confirms the purchase decision. And there is multi-period inventory model, fixed order quantities, where you do an order of a fixed quantities every time, certain time elapse, or every time certain units goes down, you make a fixed order of quantity. So there is a fixed order quantity model, and there is fixed time period model, and there is the single one. So anytime you miss 10, you go by 10. And if you miss 15, you go by 15. Now, this is some examples. Here is where we talk about the multi-order quantity, and it's basically multi-period. And we spoke about called the economic order of quantity, or EOQ, and it's basically when can you make that order in order to be much cheaper for you, cost-wise, inventory-wise, quantity-wise, and order-wise. And there is a fixed time period model, which is it's also called the periodic system, periodic review, fixed order interval system, or the P model. And that one is called, the first one is the Q model, this is the P model, which is a trigger every 3 months, I'm gonna buy this stuff. And the supplier is aware that every 3 months he has to ship that things for you. So these are, a second, reason why would you look at the inventories. So when you make a decision whether you're going to go with the fixed order quantity or fixed time quantity, and when you're working in a restaurant and you want buns coming in, you want hamburgers coming in, you want the fries comes in on time, you have enough supply for the customer to give, you need to look at whether you have a fixed order quantity or a fixed time period. And a fixed order quantity, its inventory remaining must be continue. You always monitor the inventories, and you use, for example, RFIDs to do that. And has a small average inventories. Favor more expensive items. Toward the more expensive item, you keep ordering amount, and require more time to maintain, and it's more expensive to implement. With the time, you just close your eyes, and every 3 months you make that order, or every 2 months you make that order. So the continuing taking place only at the end of review period. Has a larger average inventory, so you buy that amount every 3 months, every 4 months. Favor less expensive. It's always toward buying less expensive stuff and non-perishable goods. because perishable good might be going bad before you move them. Is sufficient for less important items and requires less time to maintain and is less expensive to implement because it's a period time. Now, establishing a safety stock level, we always talk about safety stock level in the warehouse. And it's basically is the amount that usually, if it goes below, is raise a flag or cause an alarm to have the suppliers, the manufacturing or the buyer to go and start buying them. And keep in mind, you need to take a time of ordering, how long it takes, the time of delivery before these stock level goes, before it goes on the alarm side. So the safety stock is amount of inventory carried in the addition to expected demand. You always have a safety stock there. And the safety stock can be determined based on many different criteria, based on the customers, based on the timing, seasoning. These are the safety stock. A common approach is to simply keep a certain number of weeks of supplies. And a better approach is to use the probability. So, and the probability, once again, we talk about what's the chance if I'm putting this ketchup on the shelf, what's the probability people will be pulling and taking these things. So that you take it into consideration as a mathematical approach to it. So these are the three ways of doing it. Now, the effects, how you make this decision, and the inventory model is you always consider the price break. And the price varies to the order size. Sometimes the suppliers, the more you order, the cheaper it gets, but you need to make sure you're not putting more cost on the having a bigger warehouse or these products that you're going to run. Some of them get expired before you sell it or you get it into production. So there is a balancing between these. To find the lowest, calculated the order quantity and for each price and see if the quantity is feasible. So not because only it's cheaper, you're going to order more. You need to take into consideration the warehousing costs, your money would be there stock, the process time, might, if there's a perishable and imperishable good that is needed. And then when you put it on the shelf, they might be, some of them will go bad just because you found a cheaper supplier and you just got greedy to buy more stock there. So you need to sort the price from the lowest to the highest and calculate the order quantity for each price. And if the first feasible order quantity is lower price, then you choose that. But as we said, you look at the TOC or total cost of ownership, TCO. You see, most of the suppliers, salespeople, trying not to talk about the total cost of the ownership. Let's give you an example. Sometimes you walk a salesperson and you want to, he wants to supply you with a car, sell you a car. And then he starts telling you, you're going to pay $150 every 2 weeks for this car. But he's not telling you what's the interest rate there, what's the cost of the car, what's the price of the car, the market price of the car. Here where you need to do the calculation. Do I need this car? Is this car is going to be helping me to generate more businesses? But you also need to look at the hidden part of it, where you're going to park your car, where you, the cost of the gas, cost of the insurance. If you buy a newer, insurance is higher. The interest rate that you are paying and 1% difference, it makes a big difference in the final price of the costing. So all these things is considered to be part of the total cost of ownership. To own that car is really not that you pay $150 every 2 weeks, is you take into consideration the maintenance, the cost, the parking, and those all is part of the business. The total cost of ownership, especially in the case of software, you will see some people will be coming and giving you very cheap software to implement, and you will be excited about it. But then you look at it and you say, after 1 year or 2 years, you have to pay very high um, maintenance and support. If you have to pay very high upgrade to get a consultant, it costs you so much expensive. It needs a very expensive hardwares to maintain. So you need to look at all these calculations when you bring in a software to manage your business in a production, for example. It's the same thing applicable for any product as a supply side. If you want to get breads, and if the breads breaks in 2 weeks, you cannot buy tons of it just because it's cheaper, because then you have to pay a warehouse, air conditioning, refrigerations, making sure the bread gets sold out before it goes bad, all these processes that it's needed to take it, and all add up to your inventory costs. So these are the reason that you need to do these calculations. So inventory management, it is inventory accuracy refers to how well the inventory records agreed with the physical count. That's one thing. Is how many inventory, how many units you have on your book written, and how many units are really there in your warehouse. And that could be, this gap, it could be big or smaller, and it says the bigger is more costly for you. And these days they use probably RFIDs is one of the quickest way to minimize the difference between the units written on your book and the units exist, the real number of units that available in your house. And the cycle counting is the physical inventory taking techniques in which inventory is counted on a frequent basis rather than once or twice a year. So using something like RFID, as I said, that it minimizes timing that you're going to spend on your physical counting on for inventories, because as we said in the beginning, it costs you around 30 to 35% of your cost. But in the same time, will give you just in time or always an update of real amount of unit is there. So in the inventory overall, you do two things. You want to make sure these things are in the same level, and you want to make sure it's moving fine, and the books and the real inventory is the same, doing it, and you have to do once in a while physical accounting for these products. Okay, so I think by now we should finish. I'm open for any question that you have. Let me know if you have any.